This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
New interim government to be sworn in Libya. Kenya withdraws from maritime dispute case with Somalia. And armed men attempted to kidnap more students in Nigeria's Kaduna State overnight. Hello and thank you for joining us on Africa Live. I am Peninah Karibe. Also coming up this hour. Egypt to replace old car engines with locally manufactured ones that operate on natural gas. And in sports, we take a look at the new head of the Confederation of African Football, Patrick Motsepe. We begin in Libya, where a new interim government that was recently named is set to be sworn in later on Monday. Prime Minister Abdul Hamid Deiba is leading the transitional phase. His government includes 2 deputy prime ministers, 26 ministers and 6 ministers of state. The key foreign affairs and justice portfolios have been handed to women, a first in Libya. The new cabinet is part of a UN-backed transitional roadmap which will lead the North African country to elections at the end of the year. Let's get more now from CGTN's Adel Mahroui, who's live for us in Cairo. Adel, can you give us an update on the swearing in?
Libya in general has an entire interim authority that is about to take oath today. As you said, the government led by interim Prime Minister Abdul Hamid Deiba will be taking oath in front of the parliament at Tobruk, east of the country, any time now. But earlier we've seen the first oath by the Presidential Council that is led by Al-Menafi and 2 other deputies. All 3 of them were at the Libyan Constitutional Court in Tripoli, and they have given oath to be the new interim Presidential Council that will be working and collaborating with Abdul Hamid Deiba's interim government. After they have given their oath, they are going on their way all the way from Tripoli to Tobruk to be part of the oath ceremony that is also being attended by not only Libyan officials and the entire new interim cabinet, but also we're expecting to see the UN envoy to Libya and other diplomats, as well as the general population of the international community are trying to show solidarity to Libyans as they finally formed the first unity government since 2014.
As the new administration takes office, Adel, what are some of the pressing challenges it must overcome?
They have numerous challenges. One, the first of all, of course, is to hold the elections by the end of the year, which so far seems to be that they're running out of time, as the process itself of having for the government formation and giving oath should have been weeks earlier. So that is the prime challenge, of course. But if we're talking about pressing issues, you have the COVID-19 pandemic that Libyans are suffering from. You have huge power cuts that the entire country is suffering from. You have a pressing demand of fair distribution of the oil revenues across all the 3 Libya's regions in the east, south and west. There's also the global, the national challenge of maintaining unity among Libyans in general, which is key. And on top of all of that, there is a ceasefire still ongoing, but also Abdul Hamid Deiba's government will be overlooking a successful ceasefire where there are now troops from the eastern and western forces standing on different or opposing sides at Sirte city. So with him coming in power, he should be getting the control of the militias, the military power and the police power in Libya, and that will help him maintain security and make sure that the entire political, social and economic circumstances of Libya are calm and moving steadily so that they can have general elections by the end of the year.
And finally, Adel, how much regional support does the new administration have?
So far, it seems they have huge international support. There hasn't been a single nation regional or international player that is involved in Libya that did not show a kind of support or an official statement in giving support or announcing support to the interim government led by Abdulhamid Dbeibeh and the interim presidential council as well. So will this last? That's the main question here. Will Libyans stay intact and will they all remain supporting the unity government? This is the key, and this is what, of course, the international community who are much involved in Libya will be also having an influence in that say. But so far it seems that Abdulhamid Dbeibeh is getting all the support he needs internationally from international organizations, regional and international players, as well as all Libyan factions up to now. They seem to be giving him the green light and supporting his formation of a unity government that should find the entire government institutions in Libya united and managed under a centralized authority, hoping to end the division that has been all Libyans have been suffering from for many years.
All right, Adel, thank you for that update. Adel Mahroui live in Cairo. Now, the interim government is mandated to lead the conflict-ravaged country through elections by the end of the year. CGTN's Joy Kiruki-Juma reports on Libya's transition since the start of the 2011 civil war.
Libya has been in a state of turmoil since the overthrow and killing of longtime leader Muammar Gaddafi in 2011. For a decade, the country descended into a civil war, pitting the Tripoli-based GNA and the eastern-based Libyan National Army, LNA. Multiple attempts at making peace have been unsuccessful, with parties to the conflict violating political accords. With the current ceasefire agreement holding, the UN has been in the front line in efforts to lead the country through election. Early last month, UN-mediated talks led to the selection of an interim leadership. Abdulhamid Dbeibeh was voted in as Prime Minister. Parliament went on to approve a proposed cabinet, an overwhelming vote of confidence in Dbeibeh's new administration. Dbeibeh will himself double up as Defense Minister in the new cabinet. The interim government faces various challenges, including tackling the many grievances of Libyans, from a dire economic crisis and soaring unemployment to crippling inflation and wretched public services. The interim government's mandate ends this December when presidential and legislative elections are held. Joy Kiruki-Juma, CGTN.
And now to the appointment of Libya's first woman foreign minister, a major milestone for women. CGTN's Chalm Gono with more on that.
When Libya's new Prime Minister, Abdulhamid Dbeibeh, recently announced an interim cabinet, one person stood out. Her name is Najla El Mangosh, whose efforts in breaking the glass ceiling in the largely patriarchal Libya are now being recognized. She is a lawyer who was part of the Transitional Council, which briefly governed Libya in the aftermath of the 2011 uprising. Now she's joining 4 other women in the interim government. Her appointment to the key position, Foreign Ministry, scores a first for Libyan women. Women currently make 15% of the cabinet, but that could be scaled up when deputy ministers are appointed. However, Najla El Mangosh's appointment is drawing mixed reactions.
I was so happy to hear about the women being appointed to the government. It is great news for all Libyan women, and we are very happy and hopeful with this new government. I hope that the role of these women will have a positive impact, and we hope for the best from them.
I don't care who leads the government. The most important thing is whoever leads it does it correctly with the good of the country in mind and the willingness to look after the country and to manage it for the people, the poor people who have been suffering for years from ignorance, hunger and poverty.
We are done with war. This is a first. All I want is the right person to be in the right position, whether a man or a woman. Of course, it's very exciting that there is a woman in such a position, and I think they're up to the challenge and that she will contribute to leading Libya in the best way.
Women belong in certain places, but for a woman to be in a position leading the affairs of an entire people, I don't think it will be suitable. There are certain places that need women, and others that do not. But in a position where a woman would be expected to handle the affairs of a population, I don't feel it works.
The appointment of the new cabinet comes in the wake of the signing of a ceasefire deal between eastern forces led by Khalifa Haftar and the then government of national accord that was based in Tripoli. Chamhono, CGTN.
Following on developments after Kenya withdrew from a maritime border case with Somalia, the International Court of Justice is due to begin hearings on the maritime boundary dispute between Somalia and Kenya. The two East African countries disagree over which direction their border extends into the Indian Ocean. The area is thought to contain large oil and gas deposits. Kenya argues the sea border should be drawn parallel to the line of latitude, while Somalia says it should be extended in the same direction as its land border. Kenya has since pulled out of the case, citing perceived bias and unwillingness of the court to accommodate requests for delaying the hearings due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The hearings will run until the 24th of March. For more perspective, we are joined by Dr. Nkiru Skocha. She is a solicitor of the Senior Courts of England and Wales. Dr. Skocha, can proceedings continue without Kenya's participation?
Thank you, Peninah, for having me. Yes, it can. As you have just said, this has been postponed numerous times, 3 postponements thus far, and the courts decided in 2017 that it does have the competence to hear the case. So the proceedings can indeed continue because according to law, from a legal perspective, of course, non-attendance or participation does not stop the process from continuing. So Somalia can indeed request the ICJ to proceed with the case.
Right. So in that case then, and the court makes a ruling, how does that ruling get enforced?
Now, of course, there is definitely a link between non-appearance and enforceability. But we have to understand that in the case of a non-appearance, the court still has a duty to adjudicate this case based on law, and the law on maritime dispute is well established. There's a 3-stage process the court has to go through where they draw a provisional line, they check for relevant circumstances, and then they adjust for an equitable result. So the court has a duty to ensure that the law is put forward. Now, of course, when we talk about enforceability, here we have a problem of political will. Now, the main factor in any maritime boundary dispute is that the parties work together to agree. For example, there have been there was a case with the ICJ as well between Cameroon and Nigeria. And we know that the judgment was agreed and was put forward in 2002, but it took over a decade for the line itself to be drawn. And this had to involve both parties working together with the assistance of the United Nations General Assembly, the Cameroon and Nigeria Miss Commission. So yes, courts can proceed, but in terms of enforceability, the court does not have a mandate to enforce its ruling. And so the parties would have to work together, which you need anyway, regardless.
All right, thank you very much for that. Dr. Nkiru Skocha talking to us live from the UK. In Nigeria, armed men attempted to kidnap more students in Kaduna State overnight on Sunday, as 39 others from an earlier attack remain missing. Officials say the attackers targeted the government science secondary school in Ikara but were repelled. All 307 students were accounted for. Attacks by armed gangs, usually referred to as bandits, have intensified across northwest Nigeria in recent years. 4 school kidnappings since December have provoked nationwide outrage. Last Thursday, gunmen attacked a forestry college and took off with 39 students, including a pregnant woman. A video showing some of the students has been circulating. All right, so our Philly has is live in Abuja. He joins us now for more on this. Phil, another attempt at kidnappings of students. What is happening in that Kaduna region?
Indeed, that's a question that must be on the minds of many, many people in Nigeria, asking what is really happening. It's difficult really to say, but of course we're getting these incessant, happenings of kidnappings, scare, and all of that is really, really disturbing, and it's unfortunate, it's sad. But in this case, we're thankful that the security operatives were able to rise up to the challenge and on time, to forestall this attack. It was, like you said, on a government-assigned school at the Kara local government area of the state. And according to the Commissioner for Internal Affairs, Internal Security and Home Affairs, Samuel Aruwan, he says all of the students, 307, are safe. There was also an attempt on the senior staff quarters of the school, but the security operatives were able to engage the criminals, and currently they're still on hot pursuit of these criminals to try to locate their hideouts and possible other gang members.
So Phil, we're talking of 4 kidnappings since December. That's really a huge number. Why has this region become such a prime target? I mean, isn't government offering enough security?
Well, it's really unfortunate, the fact that we're seeing most of these kidnappings occurring in the northern part of the country. It of course used to happen in the southern parts, but different state governments, security agencies have stepped up their response. You'll notice the south-west region have also been able to initiate their own local security system, local police called Amotekun, and to a large extent we've seen them also apprehend some criminals. But in the northern region, we've seen the security operatives come out several times to find these kidnapped, citizens, the students and people, but we haven't up till now found been able to hold some of these criminals to book. The security operatives have not apprehended them, and security analysts are saying that may be the reason why we're seeing more of these cases of kidnappings. It's beginning to look like, the government will need to do more to actually find these perpetrators of crimes and use them as a scapegoat, an example to deter other attackers. But then, the security system is actually stretched. There are lots of ungoverned areas as well in the northern parts. And so, apart from the insurgency that we're tackling in the northern region, we're also seeing these kidnappings, we're seeing herders and farmers clashes. It's just a whole lot that the government security apparatus is faced with at the moment.
Right. So also authorities say Islamist militants have killed about 30 government soldiers in a series of clashes in northeast Nigeria since Wednesday. Can you talk to us more about that?
Well, so that since January, since the president replaced his service chiefs, we've seen a lot of combat reports happening in the northern part of the country. That's the northeast specifically, especially combat between Nigeria's state forces against the insurgents in different villages, different communities and local government areas in Borno State and the like. So having to receive this kind of report of casualties is really disturbing, but then it doesn't mean that the government have relented in trying to decimate these insurgents. It's really sad. There was also a case of ambush, where security operatives were combing an area and they were ambushed by these insurgents. And according to authorities, they were able to repel and engage these insurgents, but of course they recorded some losses. So we're also hoping that the service chiefs who actually had to go to the northeast to where the battle is actually occurring to command from there, they've given a statement that they're not going to relent until they're able to decimate these insurgents. It's really, really disturbing, but we're hoping that we'll get more updates about these series of attacks in the northeast, especially with regards to insurgency.
Okay, Phil, thank you for that update. Phil Haza, live in Abuja, Nigeria. We're taking a short break. Coming up. The Netherlands halts use of AstraZeneca's COVID-19 vaccine after reports of blood clot issues. And Sudan set to begin its switch to a new federal system of governance.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography. and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis, Cairo, Juba, Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Sudan is now set to begin its switch to a new federal system of governance. The switch is part of the 2020 Juba Peace Agreement. Adil Mahroui takes a look at that process and the challenges ahead.
Sudan's chairman of the Sovereignty Council, Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, has issued a decree to begin the process for establishing a regional federal governance system in Sudan. Instead of a centralized government that manages 18 states, the new system would have fewer regions and each will govern a certain number of states. Analysts say it's an inevitable step that is coming when Sudan is least ready.
Sudan is not ready, but it's a reality that must take place. It's one of the items on the agenda of the Juba Peace Agreement, which in October 2020 stated that the governance system in Sudan must be a regional federal system. We expect that it will be implemented after the transitional period is over and when we enter the civil elections phase after 3 years, so by 2023.
Sudanese experts, academic professionals, politicians, militias and officials will hold a conference to discuss the new governance system in depth. The conference is expected to come up with the formation of regional governments, their parliaments and define relations with the federal government.
I expect it to be a mixed system between the regional governance system under the President Nimeri in the 70s and the state system in the past regime. Darfur, for instance, is now made up of 5 states. There could be a unified authority for Darfur. It will have a head who manages the states of Darfur through mayors or governors of each state. And then there will be a federal government that manages the regions.
Getting unanimous approval on a new governance system will be challenging. The interim government does not enjoy full authority over all Sudanese territories. Some influential militias are still standing against the Juba Peace Agreement, which is dictating that governance reform.
It's been 30 years since the last regional governance system in Sudan. There's been displacements, civil wars, which creates a challenge on how regions will be divided. Add to that the economic pressure we are going through because of the US economic sanctions. Some armed movements and militias are not yet part of the peace agreements. They must be on board.
It's not going to be an easy process. The state system introduced a lot of powers to many Sudanese states. If we're going back to a regional system, maybe many would consider that a drawback in their authority and power. That's why we need a popular discussion. People must feel included so that a new system becomes acceptable by all.
Sudan's new federal system must also guarantee a level of equality between the new regions so that they can all enjoy the same rate of economic development. This new governance system is a necessary step that might not be happening at the best time. Sudan, however, cannot but proceed in its economic, political, security and now governance reforms all at once so it can complete its transitional phase in time. Adil Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
The Netherlands says it has suspended the use of AstraZeneca's COVID-19 vaccine. The government says the jab will not be used for at least 2 weeks as a precaution. It will delay the rollout of vaccinations in the country, which had scheduled around 290,000 injections from the supplier in the coming days. The move follows reports from Norway and Denmark, where healthcare workers who had recently received the vaccine were hospitalized for blood clots. Ireland, Iceland and Thailand have also suspended the use of the drug. German authorities say they will discuss the AstraZeneca issue with the European Medicine Agency this week. The German Health Ministry says it is taking reports very seriously and constantly examining data, but will continue to use the vaccine for now. The Somali government says it expects to receive its first batch of COVID-19 vaccines soon. The country's Federal Minister of Health, Dr. Fozia Abukar Noor, said that the doses will be distributed among the federal member states in the country. The first beneficiaries will be frontline health workers, teachers, police, immigration staff and senior citizens. The country is also expected to carry out sensitization campaigns ahead of a national vaccination rollout. This comes amid a challenge with rising Al-Shabaab activity and tensions due to delayed elections.
We will be cautious about the campaign. The government will limit access to top vaccination centers. We'll also ensure security in those areas.
Tunisia has launched its COVID-19 vaccination campaign. On Tuesday, Tunis received 30,000 doses of Russia's Sputnik V. Vaccinations have started with healthcare workers, soldiers and security officers, people over 65 and people with chronic health problems.
Maharzia Hammami is the first Tunisian citizen to get vaccinated. The nurse at Badu Basic Healthcare Facility volunteered and encouraged all citizens to join the national vaccination campaign.
I worked at COVID-19 centers, intensive care units and the airport amid the pandemic and during the lockdown. The virus poses such a threat that I was the first to register, to volunteer and to get the first dose of the vaccine. It was approved by the scientific committee at the health department. The vaccine is both safe and efficient.
Members of the COVID-19 task force revealed that only 537,000 people have so far registered for vaccination on the e-platform evax.tn. However, this number is likely to rise as the health department is launching a public awareness campaign to encourage people to trust the vaccine.
Given the number of people who have recovered from the coronavirus, an estimated 60% to 70% community immunity can be achieved if Tunisians join the vaccination campaign. There is no scientific reason to avoid vaccination. It's necessary in order to stop the pandemic and resume a normal life.
Authorities announced that within 2 or 3 days, 15,000 health workers will be vaccinated with the Sputnik vaccine. The head of Tunis Emergency Medical Assistance Center warned that the number of infections is on the rise in Tunisia.
The healthcare system was affected by the pandemic. Some 12,000 medics and paramedics were infected with the coronavirus. 55% of my staff tested positive in a few months. Only yesterday, my colleague tested positive. There is no way out of the health crisis without vaccination.
The Pasteur Institute in Tunis announced that several centers have been equipped with cooling equipment with a temperature of -20 degrees to properly preserve the vaccines. The institute also revealed that the DNA sequencing operation is going to confirm or deny the infection of a 62-year-old man by the British variant.
The first coronavirus vaccination operations for the benefit of vaccination teams and frontline health workers kicked off in 25 vaccination centers across the country. Military health personnel and security forces will get vaccinated next week. Abdel Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
You're watching Africa Live. We're taking a short break. We'll be right back.
Taken me completely out of my depth, but at the same time it's exciting. It's new, it's different, it's a challenge.
It's really exciting.
Egypt is planning to replace old cars with locally manufactured ones that operate on natural gas from the end of this month. The green car incentive will cost the country up to $500 million. The first phase of the initiative seeks to replace 250,000 old cars with natural gas-powered ones in 7 governorates, including the capital, Cairo. Here's Yasser Hakim with the details.
Natural gas is quickly becoming the main source of power for vehicles in Egypt. Already there's an ongoing process to transform 150,000 cars from fuel to natural gas and dual engines. And now a new initiative is set to commence that's aimed at replacing cars that are 20-year-old or more with new natural gas-powered vehicles. To encourage car owners to join the scheme, the government will provide a $3,200 green incentive discount for the new car and an offer of 7 to 10-year repayment plan with low-interest bank loans. China is primed to be a main player in the initiative.
There are 9 vehicle companies working on this initiative. There are Chinese cars that are in the plan, such as Egypt GB, out of partnership with China's Jerry Motor. Another brand called the Geely is also in the project. It's a reflection of the strong cooperation that exists with China's Dongfeng, which has also become the first electric car local manufacturer in Egypt. The price of Chinese cars is attractive, and more Egyptians have been depending on Chinese cars in the last few years because of their quality and price.
So far, nearly 90,000 people have registered to replace their cars out of a targeted 250,000 in the first stage of this plan.
I support the initiative because it reduces pollution and also abides by UN Sustainable Development Goals. Moving to natural gas protects the environment and therefore our health will also benefit.
Natural gas is economical as it's a lot cheaper than fuel. I will save a lot of money from using natural gas.
The first phase of the initiative will cost the government about $500 million, but experts say the economic benefits are far more superior than failing to adopt the plan.
In addition to making use of the country's natural gas reserves and cutting on expensive fuel imports, the initiative allows for more local manufacturing since the new cars will have 45% of the assembled parts from local components. In turn, this supports the spare parts manufacturing while the feeder industries will become stronger.
In the meantime, the government has announced it's building around 1,000 natural gas stations over the next 5 years to add to the existing 200 that have already been commissioned and another 150 that are planned to be open in April. Yes, Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
South Africa's first photonics prototyping facility has been unveiled in Pretoria. The facility is aimed at bolstering the country's generation of energy by using light. It is funded by the Department of Science and Innovation and aims to fast-track the product development of photonics technologies and devices. Angela Kupla reports.
The facility will address the current lack of commercialized photonics products in South Africa.
And we actually use them in our daily lives, such as cameras on our smartphones, LCDs, fiber communication that gives rise to the internet, as well as laser systems.
One of the first prototypes to emerge from the facility is focused on fingerprints. Fingerprints can erode over time, and this becomes an issue when biometrics are used for identification and access control. Non-contact laser technology is used to solve the problem.
We've used the technology to image the fingertip, and in this way we're able to extract the fingerprint. So it's quite important in certain applications where the surface of the skin is damaged. So as you can see on the screen here, this is a cross-sectional image of the skin, and we actually look about a millimeter below the skin and we're able to extract what we call the internal fingerprint, and this allows for a much more secure system than conventional biometric systems.
Facility will be run like any other business. It starts with building a business model for the client's technology application.
We then take the product in, we have a look at an optomechanical design and exactly what the client wants us to do. We then go ahead and do a complete lab test, and then we start to design where we want to actually compact that entire process and make it usable in the field.
Part of the concept involves creating much needed skills in the country.
Now we've got a huge cohort of TUT interns that work in the facility. These are mostly black and female, And basically we are trying to address the transformation agenda within the country. So in terms of actual skills development, we train all of these interns to be able to then ideally leave with the product as it goes out. And they can then be in charge of the technical aspects of the product itself.
It's about the fourth industrial revolution. It's also about developing skills in the country and also product that can be used locally and for export purposes. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Tshwane, South Africa.
International rating agencies have downgraded Ethiopia's long-term foreign and local currency sovereign credit ratings. Both S&P and Fitch ratings agencies say the country's debt burden has been worsened by the pandemic. The coronavirus pandemic has wreaked havoc on Ethiopia's tourism and devastated businesses dependent on the sector, as Coletta Wanjohi now explains. According to rating agency S&P, Ethiopia's public debt stands at about $5.5 billion for the period between 2021 to 2024. Some economists say a downgrade of international credit worthiness by the agencies should not be a cause for worry.
If your private credits outstanding are relatively small compared to your bilateral, I mean, that's the case with Ethiopia. It's mostly bilateral. It's mostly with DFIs. It's very little, relatively speaking, compared to the outstanding amount what Ethiopia owes to private credits. As I said, there's only one Eurobond for $1 billion. In fact, from what I've seen, the latest number I've seen, this year, the interest payment is only $66 million, okay? So if that's the profile you're in, and you are not looking to issue in the near future Eurobonds or tap into the global private credit market, don't worry about the short-term hit to credit ratings.
Fitch Ratings highlights debts from Ethiopian state-owned enterprises to private creditors. Two of them, the national carrier Ethiopian Airlines and telecom company Ethio Telecom, reportedly have an outstanding debt of about $3.3 billion. The Ethiopian government says at the core of its economic reforms is to see that all state-owned enterprises meet payments.
From the balance sheet of the Commercial Bank of Ethiopia, it's not erased. So there will be some restructuring of the remaining debt, which state-owned enterprise has to continue honoring, but it will not come to the budget as well. We will finance it through non-budgetary means. The main source of which we are expecting soon is from privatization proceeds, as well as is also dividend from state-owned enterprise as well.
Ethiopia has applied for debt relief under the G20 program for poor countries. In its defense, Ethiopia says it needs to redirect its resources towards the immunization of its population against COVID-19. The country of over 100 million people will receive about 8 million doses under the COVAX facility supported by the WHO. However, it will need to purchase more vaccines in order to meet the needs of more of its citizens. Other African countries like Chad are seeking relief too. Zemedene Negatu says African countries should focus more on growth than debt.
So I would tell African governments, don't be overly concerned. In fact, take advantage of this unique opportunity that you've been given to reprofile your debt, to restructure, and hopefully to cancel a certain amount of your debt. A year or two, you look pretty to these investors because now they know you've offloaded a lot of your debt. You're in a position to repay them, even with the 7, 8, or 10% yield that they're looking for. So don't be too concerned. Proceed what's in your best interest.
Rating agencies say there are other risks to Ethiopia's debt profile and credit worthiness, including the ongoing conflict in the country's north and tension over upcoming elections. Coletta Wanjohi, CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. Despite the rise of streaming as the primary mode of music consumption globally, illegal music download sites have remained a major source for most users across Africa. The impact for local African artists has been missing out on major potential earnings from music sales or royalties. CGTN's Daniel Arap Moi takes up the story of one startup that's not just championing local talent, but is also leading the fight against piracy.
When Danish national Martin Nielsen moved to Kenya in 2012 to work with a venture capital firm, he soon noticed an obvious trend. Most locals consumed music by downloading tracks illegally. Having seen the evolution of Sweden's Spotify from Scandinavia into a global giant, Nielsen set out to create an alternative to illegal music downloads for African users and artists.
Most African consumers are really interested and intrigued and really want to listen to content from the continent. But because of the limitations of most of the consumers' devices, they are limited from many streaming services. They might not have the data that is needed for streaming. They might not have the storage on their devices. And so for that reason, we allow a download service so that we can give users and customers the music that they are craving.
Fast forward 8 years, the Kenya-based company he co-founded and now leads, Mudundo, is listed on the Danish stock market and is posting rapid growth in users.
Last year, Mudundo listed on the Nasdaq First North, which is a stock exchange based in Copenhagen. It is a growth stock exchange, so it's focusing on growth companies and not big sort of main market with established sort of businesses. We listed in September last year, and we had an oversubscription of 111%. That basically means that 111% more shares were bought than what we were offering.
Mudundo is free to users and makes money through advertising. With its over 20 million monthly downloads and streams, artists have flocked to the site to take advantage of the growing audiences and a piece of the growing revenue pie.
The biggest challenge for artists is usually reaching out actually to your audience, to your target audience. Marketing is always the biggest issue.
Kenyan musician Mviri is one of the 90,000 African music artists who have signed up.
Thanks to streaming sites like Mudundo, we have a way to commercialize our music. That applies to the beginners and also us as recognized artists. Just to get to know how your music is doing out there and the numbers, and now how it reflects financially. Because in such tough times, we can only depend on streaming because we don't have events at the moment. And if they are there, they're very little. So they're not very sustainable.
Mudundo's users jumped 40% to 7 million in the 6 months to December 2020. According to the company's half-year report, it's now targeting 9 million monthly active users by June 2021 and 18 million by June 2022. To hit that goal, the company is focusing on Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, Ghana, and Nigeria. Daniel Arab Moy, CGTN.
You're watching Africa Live. We're taking a quick break. There's still plenty more coming up, including this. Patients with rare skin disease battle social stigma in Kenya's Rift Valley region.
Join us in global business and see Africa through our eyes.
You're watching breaking news on CGTN.
Welcome to the world today on CGTN.
Welcome back. In Kenya, people suffering from cutaneous leishmaniasis are facing social stigma due to the disfiguring scars that the illness leaves them with. The disease transmitted by sandflies is classified by the World Health Organization as a neglected tropical disease. CGTN's Enoch reports that treatment is now being carried out.
Tabitha Wangari is among hundreds of people in Gilgil, central Kenya, affected by this skin disease. It causes multiple sores on the skin, and its name is cutaneous leishmaniasis. Wangari's trouble started when she was bitten by a sandfly.
It started like a small pimple.
then itching followed.
For almost 3 years, she tried everything in her power to cure her skin.
I was told to be applying herbs. I started applying it in 2018, but after months of doing so, nothing happened. I visited several hospitals, but the illness only continued to spread.
But in 2019, doctors at Gilgil Sub-County Hospital informed her that she has cutaneous leishmaniasis. Wangari says this illness is a source of stigma in this region.
I feel ashamed whenever I go to a place full of people. I try not to have eye contact with people.
But no one understands the stigma associated with cutaneous leishmaniasis than Amos Nene, who transports people on a motorcycle.
It's
a wound on my head, so I can't remove my head because of fear. Some people ask if I've been knocked by a lorry. But what hurts me the most is that I can't wear a helmet because if I do that, it'll hurt my head.
Even though treatment of cutaneous leishmaniasis is available, no appropriate cure exists yet.
So far, we've treated about 2,000 persons. Although we believe this is a matter that should attract even international support, because it is one of those very rare and very unique sort of conditions.
Governor Kinyanjui says they are training locals on prevention methods. Repairing cracks in building walls has been identified as an immediate intervention. It helps prevent sandflies from entering their homes.
We want to encourage people within that larger area to grow pyrethrum so that when it is in the environment, it tends to repel them.
Cutaneous leishmaniasis is a parasitic skin infection characterized by slowly healing ulcers that quite often leave indelible scars. Enoxicoli, CGTN, Nakuru, Kenya.
Chronic kidney disease is a growing burden in Nigeria, like in many low-income countries. Low healthcare financing has also hampered the design of prevention and management strategies. Now, conversations center on how to help patients live well with the disease. CGTN's Kelechi Mekalam reports.
It's hard to tell, but 51-year-old Abdul Kadri Amadu has been battling end-stage kidney failure since year 2000, just weeks before his wedding. He's undergone 3 kidney transplants and more than 2,000 dialysis sessions, costing over $300,000. A traumatic experience for himself and his family.
Finance is to get the medicines. They are not that cheap, and they are not off-the-counter medications. So you have to order. But by the grace of God, I have very wonderful people around me and family who know what it is, who know what I'm going through, and they help.
He now told us that, Grace, I'm sorry you cannot donate. And I said, why? He said, you are not compatible. I said, immediately I started crying. I burst into tears and started crying. Because we had stayed like 5 months in Bangalore, running all the tests.
2 decades on, Abdul Kadri is living his best life. Though on strict medication, 15 pills daily costing an average $3,000 for a 3-month supply. He has been able to maintain a decent level of normalcy and work-life balance.
I take strength from my faith. The first thing I live by is faith. The spirit of a man will sustain him. Everybody can tell you, sorry, you'll be fine. Well, if you don't tell yourself that you're going to be fine, you won't get up. You won't be fine.
Chronic kidney disease is prevalent in Nigeria. Health authorities say that about 17 million out of Nigeria's 200 million strong population have various stages of kidney diseases. Experts say patients' care and management has been low.
There are many causes of chronic kidney disease, but the commonest, and that's what people should bear in mind, is uncontrolled high blood pressure and uncontrolled diabetes. The treatment straight away, as soon as any patient comes in, is to have a dialysis. And they're on dialysis usually for life. Once it is stage 5 chronic kidney disease, they are on dialysis for life unless they move to the next step, which is kidney transplant.
Campaigns are ongoing across the country to create awareness on prevention, management and treatment of kidney diseases. But most importantly is the drive for survivors like Abdul Kadiri to live normal lives. Now he's inspiring many others in similar conditions to maintain positive mindsets. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
And ahead in sports, we take a look at the new head of the Confederation of African Football, Patrick Motsepe.